quantum revolution has showed us that we need to look at reality in terms of the multiverse and sort of these alternate realities and these parallel realities, and that all of it is part of this great field of everything, the quantum field that holds and stores all the information in the memory of the universe. So I really do believe that we are able to, and this is the stuff that in Intuition Lab I teach, is we tap into this stuff, we pull it down.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I have a wonderful guest today on the Reality Revolution, Kim Chestney. Kim is an amazing author. You probably have heard of her. She's been out on the interview trail a little bit. Kim is the author of the Illumination Code, also Radical Intuition and the Psychic Workshop. She's the founder of IntuitionLab and the Create Festival, and her work raises awareness about the importance of insight in the evolution of individual and world consciousness. Working for nearly 20 years in the tech sector, Kim has led initiatives with some of the top thought leaders, technology companies, and universities in the world. And she lives in Pittsburgh, so I suppose she's also a Steelers fan. Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Kim.
Thanks so much, Brian. It's great to be here.
So I was really taken aback by your wonderful book, The Illumination Code, and I can't wait to really dig into it with you. What you do is talk about an important topic we talk about on my channel a lot, which is intuition. But you really sort of marry some of the concepts of quantum intelligence into this understanding of intuition. So this is a higher level understanding of what intuition is and how it works. For the people that follow my podcast, we go all the way back to when we talk about the space of variations, non-local intelligence, and so many other interesting things. So Kim has really done an amazing job in really looking at intuition from this perspective. So please tell me a little bit more what inspired you about intuition in general, because it's obviously something you've written about and worked on quite a bit.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I've really, like you, have been curious about intuition for my whole life. As a child, I had a lot of sort of supernatural experiences happen
Hmm.
in my world that I needed to make sense of. So I think I've been on this quest most of my life to really understand what intuition is, and it's been such an exciting shift over the last 30 years or so to see our different perspective on intuition, which, when I was younger, it was still like psychic ability was something you had to have like sort of a special gift for. Only certain people did that. And now we've come to the realization over the years that actually we all have this. This is a gift we all have. We just need to learn how to use it and know how it works. So for me, I have to say writing this book, The Illumination Code, really was sort of the holy grail for my journey when it all clicked and it all finally made sense. Before that, I understood that intuition worked. I knew it worked. But until I really brought in the quantum element, this aspect of what we now understand from the quantum revolution is this understanding of the microcosmic reality and how it informs everything that we do. Before we had that understanding of a non-local field that connects everyone and everything, we couldn't really understand rationally how intuition worked. We knew it worked, but we couldn't understand how. Now, finally, for the first time in human history, we have the ability to understand through science how impossible things like precognition, remote viewing, telepathy, all kinds of psychic ability is now possible and explained by science. So this book, really, writing this book blew my mind, made all the pieces come together, really, of the puzzle. And I got to work with some really cool physicists when I was doing this to really understand what's actually going on and how it pertains to this very singular idea that intuition is a quantum function.
And the book really gives you 7 keys to unlock your quantum intelligence. For those who've been wondering how psychic ability actually works, in the book you offer a scientific explanation. How do you think the understanding of quantum physics will change our view the of the paranormal and what's actually happening in the world?
I think it will 100% change that view. And you're starting to see it already with groups of physicists who are getting behind this and realizing that this is that psychic ability, intuition, real. It is the secret sauce, the golden key that's waiting to unlock human consciousness. And, really we went through this period of human civilization where seeing is believing, and, the materialism and the rational era and the information age. So intuition really got shoved to the sidelines. Our ancestors were totally intuitive, and they recognized the magic of intuition, and they knew it worked. But somehow over the last, hundreds of years, we've really pushed it down and have been told that it doesn't exist, or it's scary, or all of these things to steer us away from it, mostly because it empowers us, because it's a higher, better kind of thinking than everyday thinking. It gets us to truth, to the source of the information in an instant. We don't have to try so hard to figure things out all the time. So I think when it comes to the paranormal and supernatural experiences, we now understand through the existence of a quantum field that we're all connected and that we influence each other energetically in this reality, from beyond this reality. And intuition is sort of the universal language that connects all beings, no matter where you are, and all forms of life, really. So there's so much to explore with intuition. I can't wait to see
Yeah.
what the next 10, 20, 30 years opens up.
What is so frustrating for me is when people say that things like intuition is woo-woo, and
Yes.
it's just not. And so I even talked to very rational people I respect that are scientists that say that it's all woo-woo. It's not, right?
Welcome to my world. This is like the bane of my existence. I swear. I come from technology. I have, a great career in business, and the thing that got me with intuition was finally I started hearing people, really smart people, using the word intuition when it comes to things like innovation, creativity, invention, ingenuity. We're starting to realize that that's the secret sauce to real genius. Einstein knew it. People like Tesla knew it. These great people in history did extraordinary things with their intuition. But here's the rest of the world. They're like, you're crazy. Intuition, that's not possible. Like, and I have been defending this for so long, and finally I think it's getting better.
Yeah.
But it really has been it's been a journey to really help people understand and recognize that it's not scary, it's not a cult, it's not, imaginary. It's something very real, and we can learn to use it, and it makes our life so much better when we do.
You start the book with a story about a gypsy in England who predicted an event in your future to the date. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories about intuition, and it's actually one of the things that really fueled my fire on this journey, because it showed me something that I couldn't deny. And I think we all need something like that in our life. Some of us have had those moments where something extraordinary has happened, and there's no rational way to explain it. And for me, it was when I was in my early 20s. I was living in England, and I went to the Hull Fair, which is this big carnival with gypsies and fortune tellers and rides and all this fun stuff.
Yeah.
Now, there's so many levels of this story that is just crazy. So the beginning of this festival was actually in the 1400s, one of the longest running carnivals in existence, in the Western Hemisphere. So it goes back to medieval times, Renaissance times, and it's been coming every single fall. Well, so this particular fall was like 1993, I think, and I went with a group of friends, and we found this fortune teller, and she was lovely, and I went into her caravan, and she told me, she sat down there, and she just looked at me. She wasn't reading any like crystal balls or cards. She just looked at me, and she starts talking to me, telling me all this stuff about my stuff that was really right, but like, stuff maybe she could have guessed or something. But then she says to me, in 1994, no, it was 1991 I was there, so it was 3 years later, 1994, you're going to be in a foreign courtroom, and it's going to be really stressful, but you're going to be doing something good. And I just remember walking out of there with my friends. I was like, did she just give me a date in the future? I'm going to be in court in 1994? And so I go and I write this down. I have it all recorded in my journal. My friends are like, well, she was pretty good, so maybe. And now I'm worried. I'm like, what am I going to be in court about? So I'm like, kind of like freaking out a little bit. And I was a kid. I was 21 years old at the time, so I really didn't want to be in court for anything. Well, sure, lo and behold, in 1993, the summer of 1993, I got a jury summons in my mailbox. And I remember standing there looking at this jury summons, and I clicked, and I knew it. I was like, this is it. I'm going to get picked for this jury. I'm going to be on this jury in 2024. And I knew that this is what she was talking about. And it's just something came over me, and I just knew it. I had the sense. And sure enough, it all played out. I ended up being sequestered for 2 weeks on a federal on a federal jury trial that was really intense and like nothing I'd ever experienced. And sure enough, I was doing a good thing, and it was stressful. So everything she said was right. 3 years in the future. So there's just no way she could have guessed that. Like for me, I was like, okay, so this woman can know the future. And she
Right.
was just a regular person. She wasn't like some alien that came down from outer space. She was just like you and me. If she could know it, could I know it? Could you know it? Can we all know it? Right?
Right.
So that sort of fueled that fire for me. So I start writing it about in the a book. And we're in the book, I said, I'm going to open this book with this story because it was such an important story in my life, because it set me on this path and showed me something that I could prove. And as I'm writing it, and I'm talking about synchronicity and how everything's connected, my friend that I'd actually gone to that gypsy with, hadn't heard from him in 30 years, since the day I left England. He looks me up on Instagram and said, I just had the thought to reach out to you. At the same time, I was writing about him and this story. So it's such a cool way to see how everything's connected. And then the final nail in the coffin was I was doing my ancestry, and I found I'm actually from that town where the festival is, and my ancestor rang it in. He was the mayor of that town in the 1500s. So life is working in
Wow.
all of these cool ways, right? To,
Yeah.
to bring us together. And we don't even realize it.
One of the things that I was thinking about when I read your book was this all the stories of people that don't get on the plane when it crashes, that didn't go in to the Twin Towers when they went down, that didn't get on the train when it crashes. And I've had this theory I talk about in my book that people are connected to all the parallel versions of themselves. There's a non-local field that we're connected to that we actually are aware of. And so in another reality, we got on that train, it crashed. And why is it statistically that there's a lower number of people that there's always in every one of these events people that have this awareness, this intuition, and so it's not necessarily proof that there is parallel realities, but what I think it's telling us is that there's a field of information that connects to the information of those realities, and we're connected to it. So please discuss how you discuss this.
I love all of that, and I think that this kind of thing is really redefining the way we understand reality. Right, the quantum revolution has showed us that we need to look at reality in terms of the multiverse and sort of these alternate realities and these parallel realities, and that all of it is part of this great field of everything, the quantum field that holds and stores all the information in the memory of the universe. So I really do believe that we are able to, and this is the stuff that in Intuition Lab I teach, is we tap into this stuff, we pull it down, and based on things like entanglement, things that we're close to, like you're entangled with your other lives, you're entangled with the world around you, you're entangled with your future. So these kinds of things are easier to show up in your intuition because you already have a connection with them non-locally and locally. So experiences like that, whether we're just pulling something down, a part of us knows everything, right? And so that's what we have to remember in this whole world. A part of us knows everything, whether it's your alternate self, whether it's your future self, your higher self, your all-knowing self, whatever word you want to ascribe to it. We don't fully understand yet how that works, but there is a part of us that knows everything that's going to happen in the future, everything that's happened in the past, everything that's happening around us. And the real cool thing about it is all of it's happening in the eternal now. There is no such thing as time. So this stuff has happened already. Everything
Mhm.
that's happening a year from now, or if the twin towers are going down, that's already there, right? So that information is there to be pulled down by our intuition. Our intuition is designed to navigate that quantum world and is able to go places that our everyday thinking mind can't.
And so for those people that are doubting intuition, that you understand that that's maybe scientifically what's going on, is that there's a version of you that has experienced this moment, that is experiencing this moment. And if we can tune into that version of ourselves, we have all the information we need as to what we can do. And the more and more we can move into this quantum intelligence, everything becomes possible. It's really an
Yes,
amazing technology, right?
yes. Yeah, it really is like a technology. It is our limitless mind, and there is actually some speculation that our brain might be a quantum computer. That there is some sort of quantum computing happening in our mind, and in my mind, it's definitely related to our intuition. That's
Mhm.
where that magic happens, right? The things we can't explain, the instantaneous knowings, the moving beyond time and space. That is quantum. right? So there's no doubt that we're able to function on this a whole nother level than what we do in this so-called physical reality, right? And there's so much more beyond it. So as we start tapping into our limitless mind, and that's what our intuition is, it is the limitless part of our mind where we have access to these things that have been hidden from us in the three-dimensional world. As we do that, who knows? Who knows? We can't even begin to fathom what we're capable of. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The things that we're doing with intuition now, we're in kindergarten. You know, it's like I always joke, like our intuition, human intuition is like AOL. We like dial it up, and it's like some people remember what that is, right? It's super
Right.
slow. It's like right. That's what our intuition's like. We want to get up to there to like high speed internet where this stuff is coming down, and we can set our intention out there and pull it back. And I do believe that's possible once we start to tap into this, practice it, learn it, instead of pretending it doesn't exist.
This non-local field kind of sounds a lot like the Akashic, the
Yes.
Akashic record. So I would love to know if you think they're similar and what, can give a comparison of these two concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just another one of the cases where Eastern spirituality has a concept that, for thousands of years, the idea of the Akashic field existed. It's written in the Bhagavad Gita 3,000 years ago. This was talking about the field, the knower of the field, the ubiquitous field around all of us. We knew it intuitively through spirituality. And then the idea of the Akashic record came up really in, a couple hundred years ago with spiritualism, and people realized that, hey, I can actually intentionally find stuff out there, right? People realize that there's like a whole world to explore there.
Mhm.
And so this early idea of the Akashic records came up, and it was sort of this hall of records where you would go into and pull down information. Well, think about it. 200 years ago, we didn't have computers, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all of the things that we now understand about information storage and transfer. What did we have? We had books. So we stored information in books. So when we designed this idea of the Akashic record, of course it was going to be a library, a compendium of knowledge, because that's all we could understand. So
Right.
we created this interface through what we understood, which was a library. But really, that interface is our intuition connecting with the quantum field. So the Akashic field, the quantum field, the Akashic records are really just different ways of talking about the same thing, which is the knowledge bank of the entire universe, this sea of information and energy that's all around us and within us, and that's instantly accessible by our intuition.
I noticed that in your book, Irvin Laszlo was one of the people that gave you a fort. And one thing when I talked to him, there's this concept that this unified field, like Akashic field, actually becomes conscious.
Yes.
Just like people are saying, can AI become conscious? Imagine if this field eventually reached a level, it may be a different level of consciousness than we understand,
Yes.
but maybe what we're experiencing now, this sort of acceleration in our understanding of intuition, is a sort of feedback mechanism from a living presence that has all this energy and information. I'd love to get your perspective on that.
I love that idea, and I love that this stemmed from working with Irvin, because I mean his books really changed my life. Honestly, starting
Yeah.
to work with him really changed my whole perspective on reality, and having an advocate like who knows as much as he does as
Yeah.
a wisdom keeper for this kind of work is really powerful. So the fact that we live in a world that's basically built of consciousness. We used to think the world was made of stuff and things, and now we know it's built of information and consciousness and mind. So, the fact that intuition is on the rise now, and it's no coincidence. I love that you brought that up, because think of all these things that are rising together, which is the quantum revolution, intuition happening together, not a coincidence, right? Even the rise of like the feminine knowledge, like the receptivity of the
Yes.
feminine mind, right? Like that's something that's rising. We're realizing that, oh, there's actually something really important about that. We don't actually have to try and figure everything out ourselves. We can just receive the information. So I think all of it is, we can look at it as an
Yeah.
invitation to participate in that higher consciousness and expand with the universe.
One interesting aspect of this, as the quantum intelligence sort of feels like it's increasing in level, we can use this as a way of understanding the craziness of the world. In general, what I mean by that is we have an intuition about other people. It seems like the skeletons in the closet are now available. It's like if everybody notices, it seems like we're finding the truth about everybody. we meet somebody in the past and we don't really know about them, but now we have this intuition or empathy. Like, I really care about this person. They're suffering. And in the past, we might not have, because this quantum intelligence is allowing us to understand what's going on behind the scenes a little bit subconsciously. I'd like to get your perspective on this.
That's beautiful. I really love that. And and it's showing up in so many ways because it's true. And before the internet and before all of the sort of understanding of quantum physics that we have now, we did sort of live more insular lives. We knew our little
Yeah,
worlds, right? We didn't know everything. So now we have access to more information, but we also have access to more of that empathy and that connection. And so we get to this point where intuition's calling us to be authentic, that if you boil into intuition down at the end to what it's requiring of us, apart from guiding us to do the right thing, take the highest path, create the highest reality, it's about being authentic. Because one thing you can't do with intuition is lie and deceive, right? So once we develop our intuition and we get to a point where intuition is highly developed, that's the question: how do we live in a world without secrets?
exactly.
It's a big question. How do governments function without secrets? How do celebrities get out there without having their secrets be known, right? How
Right.
can we live without secrets? And so we're called to be authentic and live a life that we can account for.
We're going to have to learn how to forgive a lot of things. Some things are so striking to us, but we're going to learn on a large scale that we're going to have to kind of forgive a little bit. There's going to be a coming to terms with this level of intuition that we're going at.
Yes.
Maybe it'll be 100 years from now, but I think you're on the forefront of us discussing this so it becomes more than just woo woo, right?
Yes.
Now, going back to what I talked about before, I'd love to get your perspective of parallel realities, alternate realities, and the way that integrates with quantum intelligence and and quantum intuition.
Yeah. So it's very deeply a part of our journey because that's when I start talking to people about the thing that there's no such thing as time, that everything exists
Mhm.
out in the field and that our intuition can access it. Anybody who's had a premonition or known something before it's going to happen, we can attest that humans can do this. We can do it.
Right.
Just because we can't always do it all the time, we can't prove it all the time. There's all this friction about it, but we can do that. But the natural follow up question when I tell people that is, what about our free will? Right? Like if I still have free will, then how do I know the future? I can change this. And this is where the alternate realities and parallel timelines and stuff start coming into play because we always have free will and free will to choose and manifest our particular line of reality. And so as life goes on and we're using our intuition to hopefully create our best life, right? That's the pathway that we're going forward. But sometimes people might have a premonition about the future that doesn't come true. They might have had a really valid premonition because in another timeline that could have come true, but maybe someone made different choices and the timeline they're on went a different direction. So when it comes to predicting the future, there are so many variables because there are so many realities. So there's some that are just more likely to happen that are just going to happen. Like maybe an asteroid's coming and, all the decisions we make in the world isn't going to change that
Right.
because that's still going to come, right? But if we have an awakening or we change our ways or we, live our truth or make some sort of really big shift in our life, we can change and divert our life course. And the smallest little changes can make such a difference. So it's a beautiful thing, and I do think we are still connected with those other realities. We are, like you were mentioning earlier, informed by them because they're part of us. We're entangled with them. We're still entangled with all of that stuff on a certain level. So there's a lot of magic to unwind with all of this, and some really great things to start exploring when we actually start working with our intuition.
Now, the book sort of has seven illumination keys, and I love this. The first being a part of me knows everything. And I believe that the second was the truth is within me. And I wanted to talk about the third, which is the real world is not the real world.
Yes.
How does this concept relate to intuition and explain a little bit more so I can understand?
Yeah, yeah, and that I think that's a real biggie. And they're not teaching this in schools yet. My kids aren't learning this, but they should be because it's
Right.
it's science now, and everyone knows that we don't live in a physical world. Most of us know that we live in a world of where matter and energy are one, right? E equals mc squared, Einstein stuff. So we've realized that our body's sort of a densification of the energy around us, and we have an energetic source, but it's more than that because now we realize that the fundamental building blocks of reality, when you boil down this stuff here, our hands, our tables, or all of the material stuff around us, we go from these molecules down to atoms and particles, and at the very bottom we get to this quanta that is built of something we didn't expect. It turns out the world's built of information. It's information held in the light of quanta that manifests as information and energy that creates our world. Not like a simulation, not unlike a simulation. So there's so many parallels going on here that we realize that this world, this reality that we're living in, is in fact like a projection. We are pixelated at the very core. We're made of tiny pixels of light, information, energy that builds us from the inside out. And you don't have to believe we're living in a video game, right? But there's something like this that's happening, as this world is a projection. It's an energetic projection of information and energy. And we're thinking we're living in this three-dimensional world where seeing is believing, but that's the opposite. This is just a bubble of reality that we're all sharing right now. And the true reality is beyond it. This meta reality, the thing that exists on a deeper level and a higher level than this reality. So that's what we can explore with our intuition. We can go out there and we can start learning more about what the reality beyond this reality is really all about.
So the question is, are we living in a simulation?
You know what? I've had some conversations about this. I'll tell you what, I've had some conversation, and I've worked closely with Jesse Schell. He wrote a book called The Art of the Game. And he was on going through the wormhole with Morgan Freeman, talking about this, that we could be living in a simulation, how much the world is like a video game. And there are some really sort of strong parallels when we think about this. And it would make sense that we create as we are, right? So that's not out of the question. There's something like that going on. I would say it's more edutainment than entertainment, right? I think this is an educational experience. We're here to learn and grow. Whatever we're doing in this world is part of our evolution, and it's meaningful, not just really sort of just like play, but there is a play element to it. But I've also talked about, I was talking about this with Jude Curvin, and she says, no, it's not a simulation.
Right.
She talks a lot about the holographic universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's different opinions about that, but we don't really know. And I think it's great fuel for the imagination. And I think we should use our imagination to explore these things and go out there and really push the boundaries to see what's really going on.
I interviewed Jude, and my concept was, doesn't the holographic universe kind of prove that it is a simulation? I mean, on one level, I understand where she's saying, but it's fun to think about. I mean, there's really no way we'll ever know. There's no way to actually ever truly prove this. I'd like to go back in these concepts we're talking about. How do you think it relates to reincarnation and past lives?
Well, that's something I actually have had to try to change my language about this, right? Because I obviously believe in past lives and reincarnation, but I was actually working with Peter Smith, who wrote Quantum Consciousness, and we had this conversation. It's like, Kim, you can't say past lives anymore because there's no such thing as time.
There's time,
so
right?
It's our other lives, right?
Other lives.
Because they're not happening in the past. I still say past lives anyway because no one knows what I'm talking about when I say other lives.
Right.
But technically, right? It's we have to think about our lives as happening at the same time, and they are sort of concurrent. They feel like it's the past for us because we're still going through time, and we are, I think, still doing things consecutively on some level.
Right.
So we sense our past lives. We can still sense our past lives, our other lives that are happening, even our future lives that are close by, things we're still entangled with. So people that we've been involved with, that we still have connections with emotionally, that we're working through things, we feel that. Places, people come in with talents, like Irvin Laszlo comes in, he's like a child prodigy. He's like, I don't know how I learned how to play the piano, but I can do it when I was like 2, You bring this stuff with you in some cases. So I 100% believe it's all connected, and that through your intuition, you are able to learn more about that and sort of breach that barrier, right? That makes us forget. I think forgetting is good. Like we need to forget some of that stuff because past lives has their share of trauma, if we remember all of that stuff, it's too much. So I do think that there is a like protection element in place, that forgetting and just keeping that stuff up in the non-local field is helpful to us. But once we get to a certain point where we really need to transmute that and move past it, intuition can be really helpful in pulling some of that stuff down and allowing us to see where some of these tendencies and gifts come from, and help us work through that and release things that we might need to release. So it's really important, I think, to understand the big picture of our sort of soul's journey.
As somebody that has a background in tech, I'd love to know just what you
Okay,
think.
you froze again.
Right. As somebody who has a background in tech, I'd love to get your perspective if we can reach a point with quantum computing where this will actually be a technology where we will be able to actually go into the field and monitor all the different possibilities, and there will be actual technology that capitalizes on this concept of quantum intelligence.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really like mind blowing,
Yeah,
right? And this is the place where it's like, first of all, like we could be the technology, right? And that's the really thing that makes your like bakes your noodles. We could already
right.
be that technology, right? So, like we're soft technology, right? You know, that's the kind of thing talking about, is that possible? And even looking at computing and quantum computers and the things that are happening already. I think it's without a doubt there's going to be some technology involved with this. I love Star Trek. I've been watching Star Trek. I've seen some of the things in Star Trek that they come up with, but like ideas like a holodeck, being able to move into different realities or different places
Correct.
in time. I'm intrigued by that, and I really feel like a lot of those ideas are things that are not really so impossible now that we understand quantum physics and the real timeless nature of everything.
What I think is amazing about your book is that not only you explain these concepts, but you give some practical exercises and techniques that you can use to apply. I'd love to give me an example. Is there ways, is there things I can do to apply these principles and techniques to enhance my intuition?
Yes, absolutely. So, and that's with my work, that this is where the rubber meets the road,
Yeah,
because we can sit here and talk about this all day long, but if we're not out there actually doing the work, actually getting in touch with our intuition and understanding it and applying it, then that we're missing the key part, right? So all of my books are pretty much like doing books. It's not just reading books, like it teaches you different things you can start to do to open up, recognize, use your intuition. So to get started, the first thing I always say is we need to create more white space in your mind, in your life. And it sounds like something we all say we need to slow down, because we know we do. But there's a really practical reason for that, because we are living busy lives, running around like maniacs, always on our phones, can't get off of this, right? And that creates a huge barrier for intuition. Our intuition cannot get through the statics of constant thinking, of over emotional states. It comes through the peace and quiet and stillness. So you never notice you're taking a shower, idea pops in your head, or you're driving the car, great idea for something you want to do that day, or you might even remember to call a friend you had forgotten about. That stuff comes in through the silence. So we want to open up and create more space for that wisdom just to drop in from the field. Um, and then beyond that, it's starting to really look for your intuition and honor it and recognize it and start playing with it. On my website, kimchestney.com, I have free insight card deck. Cards are one of the greatest ways. These insight card decks, I like designed them myself. I'm an artist like you, and I created these just to help people develop their intuition. But it started opening up all this magic. So you'll pick a card, and end up picking the same card like 4 days in a row, or you'll bought something, you'll pick a card with the same thing on it. This kind of stuff happens to give us validations that we've engaged the universe. So working with your intuition not just helps you to download more stuff because you've attuned to it and you've opened up to it, but it also lets the universe know that you're there, and it will start to speak back. Once you show them, the universe, that you are there, willing to play, listening, it will start to speak. And it speaks through signs, synchronicities, cool coincidences, and really a lot of different ways, both externally and internally. So I tell people to listen for those thoughts or feelings, anything that you perceive that comes out of nowhere. Like that's key. That's one of the key things I like to people to start with. So with your thinking mind, you usually think something up. There's a train of thought. insight, intuitive quantum information arrives out of nowhere. It pops into your mind and arrives in a flash. It's a sudden insight. It's something that you didn't manufacture with your own thinking process. So start paying attention. Anytime you get an idea pop in your head out of nowhere, well, where did that come from? It seemed to come out of nowhere, but it didn't. It came from the field because it has a message. It wants you to do something. It wants you to be aware of something. So that's a great place to start. And then you can start working with cards to help you to learn how to train your intuition, learn how to recognize resonance, feelings that are pulling you in different directions that we really face every day as we go through our life. For me, I really recognize that intuition works through both information and energy, right? So we realize, these are the two fundamental sort of building blocks in that quanta of light. Information is the ground state, and then energy is the excited state. And so through information, we receive inner guidance, wisdom, understanding. And then through our hearts, we feel that resonant energy, emotions, things that guide us. Oh, I just knew I should do that. It just felt so right. Or I had a feeling about that person when I met them that something wasn't wrong. That's our heart energy, reading that energy. Our heart reading that energy, whereas our minds can read the information. So it's a lot. There's so much to it. I can't
Yeah.
really sum it up, but yeah, just get out there and start playing with your intuition. That's the best way to get things moving.
There's a concept that I was first really inspired from Dr. Joe Dispenza that I integrate in almost all my meditations that relates to what you're talking about, and that's the sort of void. The only place where I can go to if I bring all my thoughts and my identity and all the things, it sort of clouds and pollutes my intuition.
Yes.
If I can go and clear my mind, and that means literally not thinking of anything, of not focusing on anything, of not placing my attention on anything, it's an avoid state, like a black hole, and people don't understand that. I'd like to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. Yes. So, when we connect to the field, we have to have an open pathway for it to come. So that void, that stillness, creates that opening. Now, if we are focusing, there's something I read about in the book called a focus trap. If you're trying too hard, if you're focusing on something, particularly, with your intuition, you're actually making it not happen. It's like the intelligent observer effect, right? When you
Right.
see it and you push it, you make it dissipate. So, not focusing too hard on things is really key. Like, don't try to look for your intuition, right? We just relax and we receive our intuition. We have to be open to our intuition. So when we get out there and play with it, we look for it. We just want to start noticing it, observing it, letting it come to us. And then when we witness something, when we experience something, honor it. If you get a little nudge that says, "Oh, you should call your mom today," go call your mom today. See what happens. Maybe there was something you needed to do. Maybe there was an important connection that had to be made. So just those little things, practicing honoring, because intuition comes from the other world and it manifests into this world. It wants that energy to come into this world and be manifested. That's the point. It wants to bring it in and help it to expand. So it's not just nudging you for fun. There's really something to be gained from those intuitive nudges and insights. So please bring them into the reality, honor them, and eventually you'll start to live by them, and you'll notice how your life changes and how you start to live from a higher perspective and a place of more peace, because you understand this higher position on consciousness, and you're not always living from this little fear mode of our egos.
Going back to what you said, I'd would like to expand on a little bit. It feels like when the heart is active with the mind, that's when we really go into the quantum computer. But we can't. There's an information overload. There's no way we could mentally go through all that information. So it's like our emotions are actually our signals that are going through this information, and so if we can read our emotions, that is like the part of the way the technology works. That's going to be our detector signal, right?
Very great topic. Exactly. Because one of the things people always ask me is, well, if a part of me knows everything, why don't I just know everything in the universe? Right? All of that information out there, like our brains is, the information from the quantum field has to be filtered through our brains so that we can actually understand what is meant for us. There's too much data out there to just download everything into like our little minds.
Right.
So what you're talking about is so important because how do we know what information that we can pull down? We pull down things we're entangled with. And that's where your emotions come in and your thoughts come in, right? So if you love someone, and like, I'll just give you an example from my life. I was really close with my grandmother, and when she passed, I didn't know what was going on, but I was driving home from school. It was midnight. I was in college, and I was just overtaken by this feeling on my body of, I didn't understand it. I was getting the chills. It was this really visceral feeling because I sensed that, because I was emotionally entangled with her. I didn't know that she had passed, but I knew something was wrong. And I felt that, right? So when you're entangled with someone, you can feel things, you can know things about them. And same thing with, like time and places. When you're entangled with your future, you can pull stuff from your future. So we navigate that world through our thoughts and our feelings, because those are the things that matter to us and are meaningful to us, and are entangled with us.
I want to talk more about entanglement. I think you're onto something because when when we understand entanglement in physics, so essentially we may be entangled with our other selves in these other realities.
Mhm.
That's one reason why we're getting signals from those other realities. Well, I don't want to go into this building because in this other reality, when I went into this building, it
Yes,
went bad, right?
yes,
And that's why also the people in our lives are so important. We're entangled with our when something's going on with my son. I seem to know, like just like you said,
yes,
so entanglement. We're essentially quantum particles, right?
right.
We're essentially just quantum particles in this sea of quantum foam, right?
Yeah, right. And that's the thing. We can translate that effect of the quantum spin still connecting to our own consciousness, right? So we're
Mhm.
consciousness that are entangled with other consciousness.
So we can create entanglement. If we want to have more knowledge of something, I think that the factor is become entangled with it, right?
Exactly. Read about it, engage with it, and become entangled with your intuition. Get in there, right? Like activate that experience, right? So you want to put that energy in certain places, and that's what you really entangle with the universe and a greater scale, and it comes back to speak to you, and it does speak to you when you reach out and show that you're interested. So whatever you love, you can create that entanglement with your time and attention.
I'd love to talk about the when in coincidences and synchronicities are always talked about in relation to intuition, but really how it's working with quantum intelligence. So there is an if we're receiving these synchronicities and coincidences, it means that there's some intelligence behind what's going on. Is it our intelligence? Is it the other intelligence? Can you explain what your theory is? Why these synchronicities and coincidences work within intuition?
Yeah, and that I mean that is a great question, and I'm not going to say that I definitively know the answer because we're still trying to understand that landscape, but in my mind, I sort of default to the part of myself that knows everything. And whether that includes all of our alternate selves or our future self, I really say, in my mind, that this part of me knows everything, and it's informing me, it's guiding, it's creating these situations. But I also can tell you that I know that it's not just that, right? We have a
Right.
spiritual family, we have people that are helping us out from the beyond. We don't lose our identity when we die. We still are beings that are connected and entangled with each other beyond this world. So I know, and I've personally experienced this countless times, that sometimes it's them, right? So I don't know that it's just one thing, right? You
Yeah.
have your teachers and guides working with you, you have your higher self working with you, and you have, like, the realm of, like, angels, teachers, all of the higher support that are coming through as well. So I think it's really a spectrum of people that are there on your team supporting you, guiding you, and really depending on the situation, it could be any of them.
I mean, I've had psychedelic states where everything is coincidental. And I think that we all have relative levels of when you're in that really peak state, then every song that comes on is talking about something. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
there's levels of this intuition. So when we're at the
Yes.
sort of base 3D normal alpha or beta level, it's just these little bits and pieces of coincidence. But when we really focus on it, everything is coincidental, right?
Yes. Yes, I love that. I really do. And I've had that happen. In fact, that happened to me the other night. I was driving around looking for the comet, and all these songs started playing that were just describing everything I was doing on
Right?
the radio. I was like, how is this happening right now? This is the coolest thing ever. So it is. It's all really orchestrated and meaningful, if, if we look at it the right way.
So, how does the non-local field make it possible to stay connected with people who have passed on to the next life, for instance?
Yeah, so that's another great gift that the quantum field has given us. That everything that's ever been created is part of this quantum field, and that means more than just our physical reality or this universe. There's a multiverse with multiple dimensions of reality that some exist on different vibrational wavelengths and frequencies. So when we pass, we our local field, right? Because there's the non-local field, which is out there everywhere, right? The Akashic record, the Akashic field, but we also have our local field, and it's our local field that creates our bodies and that we walk around our lives with. It stores all our information locally, sort of like our local hard drive, and then the Akashic field, the non-local field, is our non-local hard drive. So when we die, we just no longer have the physical manifestation of our local field, which is our body, right? And that's sort of how it's sort of the device that we use to access the local hard drive and the non-local hard drive. So that body brain, we don't have that, but we still have our consciousness, which is the field. So that is still a unique energy. It isn't just, it's not like we're immediately absorbed into the everythingness of the field and we don't exist. We still have our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own identity in some way. We just don't have this physical manifestation of it. So that allows us to still interact with people sometimes energetically based on where we're at in these different realms. So, the post life realm is on a different frequency energetically, and it overlaps space and time, but we can't perceive it when we're in this densified body most of the time.
Hmm.
Now, my sister passed, and she is, I'm just going to tell you, she is a master of communicating in this world. She has wooed everyone in the family. She sends notes, she moves things around.
Oh,
She
wow.
Yeah, I mean, this has been going on for almost 20 years now. She plays this drum behind me, and she's always there. So it was great having her while I was writing all this stuff, being like, yeah, this is real. So I think sometimes it's easier for them to reach us than we realize,
Right.
they can connect. But it's really just a matter of vibration and frequency. And I do think a big part of the quantum revolution is going to be reimagining what death is. Because it's not an ending, it's a change. And if we expand the boundaries of this world with our intuition, we're also going to be expanding our boundaries of connecting with beings outside of the three-dimensional world.
What's really exciting to me is as we expand our understanding of this quantum field, that we're going to be we've talked to people know about remote viewing where they can go
Yes.
and look at times in the past or what's going on in another country. There's going to be a whole line of work where there's going to be experts in remote viewing. Corporations will hire them as it becomes, and it's going to be just it's a new line of work for people. Uh, I'd like to get your how you envision this. Like remote viewing will be a skill that people can capitalize on because it will work. It will be truthful, right?
Yeah, I mean, your listeners probably already know about Project Stargate and people that have been doing this. The government's employed people to do this for decades, so they wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't working, right?
Right.
So if the government's going to be doing it, I'm surprised that corporations aren't doing it already. Maybe we don't know about it. Some of the certain things that are happening, but there definitely is a value in that. And even if it's not just for like psychic spying, which is what the
Right.
governments were using, and all the world governments were using it back in like the 80s and 90s, I guess, for a little while. But even if it's stuff like think about vision, seeing the future, how important would that be for innovation?
Right.
Looking at what's coming down the road and being able to anticipate that and using foresight. So there is some really interesting facets of this work that could be very useful in a business context.
My theory is that they're just consultants and the corporation won't won't say they have a remote viewer on the books, and they're not going to come out and say I have a remote viewer, but they do have people. I would love to. Eventually, we're going to get books, and in the next 10 years, where people, I was a remote viewer for IBM, because
Yeah, and well, I'm telling you, remote viewing is easy, and
it's
that's the
not
thing.
hard, right?
It's not hard, and people think it's the scariest thing of all. But we do it in Intuition Lab all the time, and people have never done it. They come in and they like nail it. I was like, see, almost everyone gets it every time, because one of the things people don't realize with remote viewing is they think you have to have like this perfect image of every single detail. But what really happens is you get these bits and bytes of important information, and
Right.
that's really the key stuff, and that's easy to download. So most people can tap into the field and pull down these bits and bytes with no problem at all, right? So once they recognize, how it actually works, and it's not that you're expected to see a sweeping vision of every single detail of the future, it becomes a lot more doable and actually a lot more productive.
The interesting aspect of remote viewing when I trained to do it myself was that it's the best remote viewers don't know anything about the subject. They're given like
Yes,
sort of a random code number. If they're
yes,
looking for what their girlfriend's doing, they're
yes,
usually going
no,
to bring their
yeah.
own expectations and it doesn't work. Like it works when you don't know what you're looking for, right?
And maybe that's like nature's way of keeping us from abusing it, right? Like we
Right.
can't use it on ourselves because it doesn't work because we're so entangled with the people and our mind gets in the way. But that's a really good point, because the less it's like anything psychic. When I started doing psychic readings when I was a kid and I was learning about all this stuff, there was, oh, it's much easier to do a reading on someone you've never met before. I was like, well, that's very counterintuitive, but it's because your mind's not in the way trying to inform you with all this rational stuff about the person. So the blank slate, that's what your intuition wants, and then you can just trust it, and because your mind's just going to mess it all up.
What does the intuitive psychic part of you see for our future? Obviously, there's no right answer, but this is something that you do. So you've pondered into what's going to happen over the next 10 years, considering that I think that we're becoming more and more intuitive, and this actual quantum intelligence is not fixed, it's increasing. So I'd love to get your perspective, view, vision, forecast for the future.
Yeah, the my vision for the future, and this is what I hold on to, looking at the positive and the highest path, is really a culture where we integrate intuition to the same level as our intellectual mind, right? Because right now it's like we go to school, we learn, we get really smart, and then we just kind of, intuition sits here. Maybe you're a creative person and you do a little bit of intuition, so it's up here, but most of the time it's just put away. If we actually train ourselves to understand our intuition, open up that part of our mind, start to expand and evolve that side of the mind, when we are functioning with both sides of our brain equally, that's when I think the real magic of human potential is going to be unleashed. And we are going to have to deal with issues of privacy and also issues of authenticity. But we're also going to live in a culture where we're creative, where we are manifesting things in this world to improve our interconnectedness. We're going to come together because we're going to realize that we are all different aspects of the one, and it's going to be more undeniable. So we're going to see less divisiveness, less of this sort of people turning against each other, and really starting to work together and create together, because we'll have a common mission of really understanding the big picture of the universe and getting out of just this small reality and expanding into whatever lies beyond.
What do you think, in your perspective, lies beyond?
Well, when I try to ponder that, I think it goes back to, I forget where I read about it. It was one of the philosophers talked about. You get to a certain point, and your brain isn't capable of comprehending what it is, and I think at the place that we're at in our kindergarten intuition, it's kind of like I look at my backyard and I see like the chipmunks and the squirrels, and I'm like, wow, I'm their whole reality, right? I give them nuts and stuff, and I'm this person. I'm like, that chipmunk has no way of understanding what an ocean is, or what like
Right.
Russia is, or what the moon is, right? So we're kind of like chipmunks with our intuition, where there's a whole world out there and we can't really conceive of it. But as we start to expand our minds and our consciousness, I think we're going to start to be able to conceive of it gradually more and more. Like even stuff what's happening with extraterrestrials, extra dimensionals, starting to really conceive of our reality as a multiverse. Like that's a mindset shift. So we're going to have to do this gradually. I don't think it's something that we can just jump ahead to because it's so inconceivable
Yeah.
to us right now. But we'll get there step by step.
I always come back when we have discussions like this to Plato and his cave with the shadows on the wall. We're limited in this little vessel that we have. We can see, we can hear, we
Right.
can taste, touch, but it's just these five senses. And there's so much that we're not aware of, and that limits our intuition. So when we understand that we can transcend that, there's 30 different senses that we can obtain at
Yes,
some point. That's when we can truly see beyond the cave.
exactly. Because we can't conceive of senses we don't have, right? We have to
Right.
like work into that space and evolve into that space.
So please tell people how they can find your information. I'm going to have a link to the Illumination code in the book, in the description and in the comments. And you also have an Intuition Lab. So tell us where we can find your information.
Thanks. Yeah, for sure. So you can get my books anywhere, your favorite bookseller online. They're a great deep dive into working and using your intuition. My website, kimchestney.com. I have a ton of free stuff there. You can go to start practicing, just really getting your intuition moving. That's really my goal in life is to help people just to start learning how to use their intuition and expanding it, and no experience necessary. So you can check that out, and my school, IntuitionLab.com. You can practice with us. You can come out and try these things, do some remote viewing, do some past life exploration. We bring people together. It's a lab because we want to explore together and research together and try new things. So everybody's welcome.
And I can't recommend this book enough. If I know that there's a million books on intuition, but I'm telling you, this is not your normal book on
Thank
intuition.
you.
This marries the concepts of quantum physics into an intuition, and it's groundbreaking. And I cannot recommend enough. Everybody should check it out. You'll come away with it with actual practical techniques that you can use to enhance your intuition and a greater understanding of what's actually going on when you have that hunch. That is the powerful aspect of this. So thank you for sharing this with me. And thank you so much for coming on to the
Ask
Reality
me again.
Revolution.
So close. We're so close. But listen, let me tell you.
And I cannot tell everybody enough to read this book. It's amazing. I know that there are a million books on the intuition, but this is not like those books. This marries the concept of quantum physics with intuition and gives you a greater understanding of what's actually going on when you have that hunch, when you have that intuitive flash that comes to you. A lot of us don't understand what's going on, and so we don't pay attention to it. We push it down, and so this book really opens up the idea that this intuition is important, and it gives you practical steps and ways for you to use your intuition and enhance your intuition. So I can't recommend it enough. Thank you so much for coming on the Reality Revolution. We
My
appreciate it
pleasure.
immensely, and hopefully we can talk to you soon. Can't wait for your next book.
Thanks so much, Brian. It's been awesome.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Kim.
Mm.
We return you now to your local announcer.